Have you ever wondered why no matter how much you grow, something still haunts you in silence? You get the promotion. You find the relationship. You follow the rules of healing, of self-improvement, of being better. And yet, when the noise dies down, when you're finally alone, there's a familiar weight. A subtle ache. A quiet voice whispering, "This isn't it." You tell yourself you're evolving. You're stronger now, smarter, more mindful. But beneath all that personal development lies something darker, something unresolved. And it waits, patiently. It shows up when you're triggered, when you lash out without meaning to, when you sabotage love, success, peace. It lives in your dreams, in your guilt, in that deep shame you never speak of. You don't know exactly what it is, but you've felt it all your life, and you've tried everything to avoid it. But what if the real reason you're stuck isn't because you're not trying hard enough, but because you're rerunning from the one part of yourself that holds the key to your freedom? Carl Jung had a name for this part. He called it the shadow, the repressed, denied, wounded self that we bury so deep we forget it exists. It is everything we don't want to admit, everything we were taught to hide. Our rage, our envy, our weakness, our unmet needs. And here is the truth most people never dare to confront. You can de-heal what you refuse to face. You can't be whole while you're rejecting pieces of your own soul. As long as your shadow remains in the dark, it will control your life from behind the scenes, and you'll call it fate. Facing it won't be easy. In fact, it may be the most terrifying thing you'll ever do, but it's also the most necessary. Because the journey to becoming your true self doesn't begin with light. It begins with darkness. Before we go deeper, if this message is already resonating with something inside you, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. I share videos that go beyond surface advice, diving into the soul, the psyche, the questions most people are afraid to ask. So if you want to be the first to know when the next powerful insight drops, this is how you stay connected. Now take a breath, because what comes next might just change the way you see yourself forever. He has everything that should make him happy. A successful career, a partner who adores him, friends who admire him. He's respected, well-liked, and stable. His Instagram is filled with smiles, travel, and productivity. To anyone watching from the outside, he's made it. But inside, something is always off. He doesn't talk about it much. He's learned to stay composed, but when the lights go off, when the house gets quiet and he's finally alone with himself, it returns. That heaviness, that ache in his chest, that feeling that something important is missing, but he can't quite name what. It's always been there, in one form or another. When things start going well, he finds a way to ruin them. When someone gets close, he pulls away. He creates conflict where there is peace. He finds fault in love. He gets restless in moments of calm. And he doesn't know why. He tells himself he's just wired differently, that he has high standards, that he's protecting his peace. But deep down, there's a truth he can't articulate. He's afraid of being known, because being known means being seen. And being seen means being vulnerable. What he doesn't realize is that his life is being ruled by something invisible, not a person, not a trauma he can easily recall, but something even more intimate. A part of him he buried long ago, a part he never wanted to look at again. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is not just your darkness. It's everything about you that you've repressed, denied, or disowned. It's the feelings you weren't allowed to feel, the desires you were told were wrong, the pain you never got to process, the weakness you were punished for, the parts of your personality that made people uncomfortable. And so you split them off. You became the good one, the strong one, the successful one. You did what you were taught to do: adapt, perform, be liked. But the price of adaptation was authenticity. And the shadow doesn't disappear just because you've covered it with a polished identity. It waits. It waits in your reactions, your patterns, your triggers. It waits in your passive aggressiveness, your jealousy, your need to control, your outbursts that feel unlike you. It waits in your silence. Until one day, it takes over, and you call it fate. He doesn't know it yet, but his sabotage isn't random. His anger isn't just stress. His emotional distance isn't a quirk. These are symptoms, messages, echoes from the parts of him that were never allowed to speak. He's been trying to fix himself with discipline, motivation, and being better. But what he needs is to stop running. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's what's happening here. He thinks life is happening to him, but really, it's happening through the parts of himself he refuses to face. His shadow is steering the ship. And here's the hard truth. The shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be heard. It wants integration, not suppression. But facing it requires more than courage. It requires grief, rage, honesty. It requires the death of who you thought you had to be. Because when you open the door to your shadow, you will see all the things you've blamed others for inside yourself. You'll see the manipulator, the coward, the addict, the liar. The one who hurt others because they didn't know how to love themselves. It's confronting, humbling. It shatters the persona. But it also sets you free. Because true freedom isn't found in becoming perfect. It's found in becoming whole. And wholeness includes the parts you tried to leave behind. The man in this story could be anyone, your partner, your brother, your mentor. Or maybe it's you. You might feel broken, conflicted, like you're failing at life even though you're doing everything right. But you're not broken, you're not failing, you're fragmented. And it's not your fault. No one ever taught you to face the shadow. They taught you to hide it, to perform, to survive. But survival is not the same as living. And one day, surviving stops being enough. The shadow is not a curse. It's an invitation to reclaim your power, to rewrite your story, to meet yourself fully, perhaps for the first time. And yes, it's terrifying, but nothing is more dangerous than pretending you don't know it's there. We often think of the shadow as the bad parts of ourselves, the anger, the envy, the jealousy, the shame. But that's only part of the story. Carl Jung described the shadow not just as our darkness, but as everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. It's not limited to evil or immoral impulses. It also includes our unmet needs, our hidden talents, our unexpressed desires, our capacity to feel deeply, our vulnerability, and yes, even our brilliance. The shadow is born the moment we start editing ourselves to survive. As children, we learn quickly which parts of us are acceptable and which ones are not. Maybe you were told not to cry. Maybe you were scolded for asking too many questions. Maybe your anger was punished, your sensitivity mocked, your creativity ignored. So to be loved, to be safe, to belong, you adapted. You buried the parts of you that didn't fit the image others had for you. You became the good kid, the strong one, the achiever. But the parts you disowned didn't disappear. They became your shadow. This is why the shadow is so dangerous, not because it is evil, but because it is unconscious. It controls your life from behind the scenes. It whispers in your thoughts, moves through your reactions, and distorts your perception of reality. You don't even realize it's there until it's too late. You think you're choosing freely, but in truth, you're reacting to invisible forces inside you. That's why you keep repeating the same patterns in relationships. That's why you overreact in certain situations. That's why you sabotage yourself just when things are going well. It's not bad luck. It's not just how you are. It's the shadow, acting without your permission because you never brought it into the light. Jung famously said, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. When we ignore the shadow, it grows stronger. It seeps into our behaviors, into the way we judge others, into the way we lie to ourselves. It shapes our relationships, our identity, even our destiny. Sigmund Freud referred to this as the return of the repressed, the psychological truth that what we suppress doesn't disappear, it festers. It returns in symptoms, compulsions, projections, and addictions. The more you push it down, the more power it gains. And Nietzsche, in his own prophetic way, warned that whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. This is the paradox of the unexamined shadow. When you deny your darkness, it doesn't make you virtuous. It makes you dangerous, especially to yourself. Think about it. When someone represses their anger, it doesn't make them peaceful. It makes them passive-aggressive, silently resentful, and emotionally volatile. When someone represses their vulnerability, they don't become strong. They become cold, distant, unreachable. When you deny your need for attention, you don't become humble, you start manipulating for love in unconscious, damaging ways. This is why we must be cautious with people who seem too perfect, too self-controlled, too spiritual, too nice. Often, beneath the surface lies a shadow so powerful, it's waiting to erupt. And if you've ever been surprised by your own reaction, said something you didn't mean, felt rage you couldn't explain, crumbled in a moment you thought you could handle, you've met your shadow too. The shadow is the emotional blind spot of your psyche. And because it's hidden, it's the part most likely to cause harm, not because you're a bad person, but because you're unconscious. But here's the deeper truth. The shadow isn't just pain, it's potential. Inside the shadow lies everything you could be, but we're too afraid to become. Your assertiveness, your passion, your power, your voice, your truth, your full emotional range. Jung didn't believe in fixing the shadow. He believed in integrating it, bringing it into awareness, owning it, learning to walk with it. He called this process individuation, the path toward wholeness, not perfection, not purity, wholeness. Because without the shadow, there is no growth. Without the shadow, you will never be truly free. You'll always be reacting to wounds you won't name. You'll always be ruled by feelings you think you've moved past. You'll always be afraid of being seen, because deep down, you've never truly seen yourself. To integrate your shadow is to say, yes, I feel that. Yes, that's part of me. Yes, I have the capacity for both light and dark, and I am not ashamed. It's not an easy path. In fact, it's the most emotionally dangerous thing you'll ever do. It requires you to confront the parts of you that disgust you, scare you, or make you question everything you believed about who you are. But if you don't do this work, the shadow will do it for you. And it won't be kind. So if you've been feeling stuck, like something inside is pulling your strings, like no matter how much you try to change, you keep ending up in the same emotional dead ends, look into the darkness. Not to be consumed by it, but to reclaim it. The shadow is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It is your missing piece. And the moment you have the courage to face it, not fix it, not fight it, but face it, is the moment your real life begins. This is not a gentle healing journey. Facing your shadow isn't some spiritual spa day. It's not lighting candles, journaling for clarity, or listening to guided meditations until everything makes sense. No, this path is brutal. Beautiful, but brutal. Because it begins with death. Not physical death, but the death of the version of you that you've spent your entire life constructing. The version built on survival, on approval, on the need to be accepted, applauded, and loved. The mask, the performer, the achiever. The one who always has it together. That self cannot survive this journey. It must die. Why? Because your shadow, the part of you you've been running from, is not just some dark corner to clean up. It is everything you were not allowed to be. It's your grief, your rage, your lust, your confusion, your envy, your power, your need, your pain, your truth. And to meet it honestly, you must stop pretending. That means you'll have to feel things you've buried so deep you forgot they ever existed. You'll feel raw jealousy, toxic competitiveness, unbearable guilt, unmet longing, and a kind of shame that burns like acid. You'll see the parts of you that manipulate, that self-sabotage, that craves control, that lie, that punish, that silently scream for validation. You might hate what you see at first, but in that hatred lies the seed of liberation. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Enlightenment isn't a glow, it's a fire. It doesn't come from denying what hurts, but from standing inside the fire of your own contradictions and staying there awake. Most people run at the first sign of discomfort. They patch it up with affirmations, distract themselves with productivity, or drown it in another dose of dopamine. But the shadow cannot be sedated. It demands attention. And if you don't face it voluntarily, it will show up through crisis, illness, heartbreak, burnout, anything it takes to get your attention. To face the shadow is to face the mirror, and it will not flatter you. You'll have to admit that sometimes your kindness is performative, that your patience is rooted in fear, that your silence is not peace, but repression, that your drive for success is not purpose, but proof that you are enough. You'll have to acknowledge that the victim inside you still wants revenge, that the child inside you still feels invisible, that the adult you pretend to be is exhausted from holding it all together. And yet, paradoxically, the shadow is also home to everything you long for. Your creative fire, hidden there. Your authenticity, buried under shame. Your voice, silenced by old beliefs. Your joy, guarded by fear. Your passion, entangled with guilt. The shadow is not a monster, it is your unmet self, waiting for permission to live. But first, you must descend. This descent is not metaphorical. It feels physical. You'll lose people, or finally realize they were never truly with you. You'll lose beliefs that once kept you safe. You'll mourn identities that no longer fit. And in that space of disintegration, you'll be tempted to turn back, to rebuild what once was. Don't stay, because underneath that collapse is something ancient, something real, something that doesn't care how others perceive you. That doesn't need to prove its worth. That doesn't hide from feeling. This is you, unmasked, unfiltered, unafraid. But don't expect applause. The world celebrates comfort, not courage. You may feel alone at first, misunderstood, even rejected. But those who have walked this path before you, they will recognize you in your eyes, in your silence, in your unshakable presence. Because once you've faced your shadow, you stop needing to perform. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer shrink, you stand. You no longer abandon yourself to be chosen, you choose you. This is the true revolution, not becoming someone new, but reclaiming all that you are and were never allowed to be. The shadow is not here to destroy you. It's here to dismantle the lie you thought was you. And yes, it's terrifying. But the alternative is far worse. Living a life of quiet self-betrayal, ruled by invisible wounds you refuse to name, sabotaging love, purpose, and connection just to maintain a mask that was never really yours. So let the old self burn. Let the illusions shatter. Let the grief move through you like a storm. And when you rise, and you will not rise as a version. You will rise as yourself, whole, fierce, unapologetically human. Because in the darkness you feared most, you didn't find a demon. You found the doorway home. There comes a moment in this journey when something shifts. After the storms, after the rage, the grief, the unraveling of everything you once believed you were, there's a silence, a stillness. It's not the silence of repression, but of realization. For the first time in your life, you're no longer at war with yourself. And it doesn't feel like a victory, it feels like a homecoming. Because once you've truly faced your shadow, you begin to understand something radical. It was never your enemy. It was never trying to hurt you, it was trying to protect you. Crude, chaotic, unrefined, but protective nonetheless. Every self-sabotaging behavior, every outburst, every emotional shutdown, every toxic pattern, these were not flaws. They were defenses. Unconscious, yes. Sometimes destructive, absolutely. But always coming from a place of pain that was never given language. When you finally see this, the shame begins to melt. You no longer look at yourself as broken. You see a human being who adapted brilliantly, if imperfectly, to survive a world that didn't always know how to love you properly. And this is the awakening. You were never meant to destroy the shadow. You were meant to reclaim it. To take the energy that was locked in repression and redirect it toward creation, toward presence, toward love, toward truth. Because once the shadow is integrated, it transforms. The fear becomes clarity. The rage becomes power. The jealousy becomes insight. The desire for control becomes grounded responsibility. The craving for love becomes the ability to give it freely. You stop reacting to old wounds. You begin responding from conscious awareness. You no longer live in survival mode, you live in alignment. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to choose. Really choose. Not out of fear. Not out of guilt. Not out of needing to prove something. But out of a deep connection to your truth. Your whole truth, not just the pretty parts. You can finally say yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no. You can love without clinging. Walk away without hatred. Succeed without proving. Fail without collapsing. Speak without performing. Be seen without fear. This is the power of integration. You no longer need the world to reflect your worth back to you. You carry it within. And in that space of inner security, you can truly love, not just others, but yourself. Not the best version of yourself, the real one. The one who has made mistakes, who has known darkness, who has fallen and risen and fallen again. The one who no longer needs to hide, because nothing inside is unloved anymore. This is the love that changes everything. Because when you stop rejecting pieces of yourself, you stop rejecting them in others too. You become less reactive, more compassionate. Less judgmental, more curious. Less defensive, more open. You no longer need to dominate the room or disappear in it. You just exist. Fully, freely, authentically. You become whole, not because you are perfect, but because you are integrated. And make no mistake, this is not the end of your evolution. The shadow will always be there, whispering truths you may not want to hear, but now you listen. You no longer run. You no longer blame. You have become intimate with the part of you that once terrified you. And in doing so, you've tapped into a well of inner wisdom that no book, guru, or external system could have given you. Because real freedom is not about controlling your emotions. It's about no longer being controlled by them. It's not about transcending your humanity. It's about embodying it, every glorious, messy, powerful inch of it. Carl Jung believed that the shadow, once faced, becomes a bridge, not a barrier. A portal to the self, a guide to deeper purpose, deeper love, deeper being. And that's the invitation. Not just to survive your wounds, but to let them shape you into something more complete, more aware, more alive. The awakening isn't some mystical event in the mountains. It's what happens when you look at your reflection, warts, wounds, and all, and whisper, "You're still worthy." It's what happens when you stop asking the world to validate your existence and begin creating a life that reflects who you really are. So is it dangerous to face your shadow? Absolutely. But you know what's more dangerous? Living your entire life asleep. Asleep to your patterns. Asleep to your pain. Asleep to your power. That's not just dangerous. That's a tragedy. So let this be your call. Not to heal in the way the world markets healing, but to awaken. To return to yourself with eyes wide open and heart unguarded. The shadow is not the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of a life where you are no longer divided. No longer performing. No longer afraid of who you really are. The beginning of a life lived from wholeness. And in that wholeness, there is peace, there is power, there is you, fully seen, fully felt, fully alive. If you want to be truly free, you have to go into the fire, into the silence, into the anger, into the shame, into the cave you fear the most, because inside it lies the part of you you've been searching for all along. The truth is, most people will spend their entire lives avoiding that cave. They'll build identities around their wounds, build relationships that protect their numbness, build careers that shield them from stillness. They'll keep running toward validation, achievement, distraction, hoping that something out there will finally make them feel whole. But wholeness doesn't come from adding more. It comes from reclaiming what you lost. And what you lost, most likely, was you in the process of trying to be enough for everyone else. You became what the world applauded, what your parents preferred, what your teachers expected, what society rewards. And maybe you've succeeded. Maybe you've become someone others look up to. But late at night, when there's no one to perform for, you feel it, that ache, that restlessness, that feeling that no matter how much you accomplish, something essential is still missing. That something is the part of you you disowned to survive. It's the rage you suppressed, the dreams you abandoned, the voice you silenced, the needs you minimized, the vulnerability you buried under a mask of competence. It's the child inside you who was once told, "You're too much," or "You're not enough." It's the shadow. And you will never be truly free until you stop running from it. Because here's what they never told you. The shadow holds your power, not the kind of power that dominates, not the kind that controls, but the kind of power that sets you free from performing, proving, and pleasing. The kind that lets you show up in a room and take up space, not because you were trying to impress, but because you finally accepted that you belong here. You were always meant to belong to yourself. But you can't do that while living divided. You can't become whole while rejecting parts of your own soul. You can't step into real intimacy while hiding behind your curated self. You can't feel real joy while numbing your pain. You can do love without fear if you haven't first sat with the parts of you that believe they were unlovable. The cave you fear to enter is not outside you, it is you. And it's waiting, not to destroy you, but to reveal you. There is no guidebook for this journey, no guaranteed timeline, no checklist that says, "Congratulations, you've integrated your shadow." There's only the quiet daily courage of looking inward, of telling the truth, of feeling the feelings you once ran from, apologizing to yourself for all the years you spent abandoning yourself. There is the moment when you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What have I been protecting myself from?" And there is the sacred shift when you stop trying to be someone else and finally decide to be you. Not the filtered version, not the edited version, not the version your trauma shaped or your culture demanded. Just you, real, raw, honest, whole. That's where life begins. That's where love becomes possible. That's where freedom lives, not in perfection, but in presence. Not in escaping pain, but in embracing the fullness of what it means to be human. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. If you've been waiting for permission, you don't need it anymore. If you've been waiting for the right time, it's already here. You don't have to be fearless. You just have to be willing. Willing to feel, willing to remember, willing to fall apart so you can finally come together. Because the shadow is not your enemy, it's your invitation. Your invitation to stop running, to stop hiding, to stop apologizing for who you are. Your invitation to end the war within, to step out of survival, to meet yourself fully, in the light and in the dark, to become whole. And that is where everything changes, not because life gets easier, but because you're no longer pretending to be someone living it. If this message stirred something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the like button to support this kind of soul-deep content. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next awakening message. Every week, we dive into the parts of ourselves the world teaches us to ignore. And if today's video gave you even one truth that hit home, drop a comment below. Let me know, what part of this resonated most? What insight are you walking away with? Your reflection might be the very thing someone else needs to read today. Let's grow together.